all know and love Terry as one of our foremost portrait artists in pastel. And I've been haunting him to do a demo, do a class, do something, and he's been backing away from me every step. And I finally convinced him to maybe do this. Get his feet wet before he gives us a good demo. And so he brought, I see, a nice variety of stuff, and let him talk about how you became an artist and what started you on your choices. Okay? Terry McManus.
When you suggested this program, I said, oh no. I said, I know it's going to happen. I'm not going to get away from it. So finally,
yes.
I knew it was coming about. So finally I agreed to do it.
Thank you very much.
But actually I found it really interesting. It was something I really didn't want to do. But doing this, there's so much I forgot that I had done in the past. I didn't know I did landscape. I didn't remember I did landscapes. You know, still lifes or anything. People say now, I said you do portraits. I don't do anything else. But I used to do a lot of landscapes and seascape. Still lifes. And then trying to remember back, when did I start painting? And actually my earliest memory is when I was about 5 years old, and we had a summer home in Montauk, and I was lying on the floor there, copying faces from magazines. I didn't coloring books, but just faces from magazines and stuff. And then the most vivid memory I have is that I was in the 2nd grade, and there was a girl in my class, and she said her father was an artist. And she brought me back to the house to meet her father. And I walked into the apartment. We lived in Astoria at the time. I walked into the apartment, and it was one huge studio. He had whole walls with just shelves full of papers and art supplies and stuff. I'm 7 years old, but I was just taken by this. And I can still remember saying, and I'm an artist too. But after that, I can't remember that much. I just always was drawing. And my father was really a book collector. Our house was floor-to-ceiling wall-to-wall books. And he also had a lot of books from museums. Those big old books with pictures of the masters and stuff. And I used to love looking through them and copying the paintings from that. And I guess that's all I can remember. Oh, I was also had my John Nagy set. So looking back, my parents must have supported me, because I can't remember details, but they must have been supportive in buying me the John Nagy set. And somewhere along the line I got a set of new pastels. I don't remember when, but I still have that same set. Wow. It's a little set. But there was only certain colors I always used, and the others are still sitting in the box. And that was pretty much through grammar school. High school, I don't know how people knew I was an artist, because I don't remember walking around telling people that I was an artist and stuff. But I always ended up getting stuck doing the posters for friends that were running for offices and stuff like that. And I guess still just drawing. I was drawing, and I couldn't watch television, for instance, without having a pad on my lap and drawing. And as Fran said, after we got married, you have more pictures of your feet. That always continued. In college, I ended up doing a lot of portraits for, friends, their girlfriends and stuff like that. I never charged anything, and the only course I took was a big mistake for me. I took an elective, and it was this Italian artist who was totally abstract, and at that point I was into Norman Rockwell, and I went to college in New Hampshire, and there was the Curry and Hodge Museum, and he didn't want drawing, he didn't want anything really, we didn't get along, and that was a disaster, that class. After that, I ended up going to the Navy, and ended up sketching all the time, sketching fellas, on the ship and stuff like that. And more important, that's when I met Fran. Like a MGM movie, The Three Sailors, and we're on shore leave in San Juan. We're in the outdoor lounge at the Carib Hilton, and there was 3 sailors, and there were 3 girls. And of course, we ended up sitting with them.
Who picked up who? Who picked up
Our
who?
first date was to a bullfight. Fran lived in Boston at the time, but at that time they had a shuttle that went from LaGuardia. Eastern Airlines had a shuttle that went from New York to Logan Airport. I think it was $15.
Yeah,
So that's how
I was
we-
a frequent
Yeah,
flyer.
we were.
I was a frequent flyer.
Then also in the Navy, I ended up doing the cartoons for the cruise book. And that was the first time I ever did cartoons. And I really enjoyed doing that. It was a lot of fun. After that, we got married. I didn't draw for quite a while because other than doodles, but I was going for a master's degree in social work and we had 2 little kids, so it didn't really leave much time. But after I finished, then I started getting back to drawing. And this is where I was so surprised when I started looking back, is that I did an awful lot of landscapes, but pen and ink. I enjoyed pen and ink. And so I totally forgot I did that. I used to go out all the time, just constantly drawing, doing scenes. I'll pass it around. Might be a tiny toy. And,
Want me to pass the other one in the back?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah, that was same type of thing. It was just drawing. We had a camper, we'd go camping, and I would always go doing sketches and stuff like that. So, I don't know if you want to look at that. And I still did a lot of portraits, and these were some of the earlier works. These were Fran. She was my model.
That's you?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's Fran.
I can tell.
I
Graduate.
think I've improved it. I hope I've improved it.
When did you do
He
that?
looks the same.
What?
When did you do
These were probably 30, 35 years ago.
that? Wow.
More than that, I guess.
Yeah, more than that.
That was all done, it was a self-portrait around the same time. So I think I learned how to do hair a little bit better.
You have long hair.
Yes.
Hey,
And it was brown,
yeah.
not gray. And I always try, I never had any luck taking courses. There was an artist, Bruce Fusco, in Setauket, and he had a portrait class. I signed up for that. We had 2 classes, and he ended up losing the building, so that ended that. Then there was a woman in Ronkonkoma that taught pastels, and I signed up for her class, and that's when I did this. And,
Yeah.
but again, she ended up moving to Florida right after, so that ended up that.
Is that a pastel, Terry?
That was a pastel,
No.
yeah. And, again, this I just found, I threw in, again, it was, as I said, I did a lot more landscapes than I realized.
Can you raise up a little bit?
I don't think you
Oh,
can
I
see
see.
it. These were from photographs, so it wasn't from there. I did try some painting. Obviously, this was from another painting. You're not going to see a clipper ship or a current photograph of a clipper ship, so
Yeah,
it's copied from that painting. And I did tried still life. Well, I don't know, when I look at it now, but believe it or not, we had this hanging on our wall in our kitchen
Yeah.
for many years.
Yeah, we
but,
did.
I would not hang it now. And this was probably around the same time. I like this a lot better.
What's the time frame, Terry?
These all go back probably 25, 30 years ago. Then I did, there's a there was a life drawing group that met at Stony Brook, and I think I must have met Mike at the time because we know a lot of the same people that attended that, and I went to that for a couple of years. And these are just a couple I could find. Most of they were the big, manila sheets that you use, and I must have tossed them out, but I only found a couple.
Oh, that's nice, that's wonderful.
And like that. So I know Mike, you knew a lot of the people that went to that. So that Stony Brook class,
Yeah.
life drawing class.
Yeah, and a lot of them are still trying to get together to do life drawing,
Yeah, that still meets, I think, right?
like that girl Irene. Chances a lot of shows that you would enter now.
After we were married and I was working for the county, I ended up doing a lot of cartoons for people that were retiring and birthdays and stuff like that. People would ask me to do them. And one day I was reading the portrait record and I was noticing that they didn't have any cartoons in there. So I said, well, maybe I could do something like that. So I drew up a cartoon and I wrote it down and they liked it. And I ended up doing cartoons for them on a weekly basis for about 3 years.
Oh.
And I think what they pay, you probably could have mowed lawns and paid more money for them. This was the first one I ever did. And actually I won a state award for editorial cartoons.
Just out around.
Yeah.
He used my parents as a
Yeah,
base,
right.
right? My mother was a
Yeah, I used
teacher.
this couple all
She
the
was a
time.
little-
And
Okay.
her parents, I used to model her parents and they found out they didn't appreciate it. Look at her viewing.
Headed went over your mother-in-law.
Excuse me?
Are they larger panels?
No, it was that
The
size.
size, oh
Yeah. Yeah, well, what happened, I started out doing one,
Yeah.
but they paid you by the panel. So then I started sneaking in 2 and 3. So, if you know, I started it's like 5 or 6. Then it became a little more worthwhile. But that's very stressful doing cartoons. I don't know how these cartoonists do it every day. I mean, I just did it once a week. And during that 3 years, I don't think I did anything else. Because it's on your mind. You have to get this cartoon done. You've got to think of an idea. And then come up with the design, So it took a while to work just for one cartoon. And then very discouraging, I read one time that people look at a cartoon for 7 seconds. I spent hours doing this. And it's true, I started to watch people after you do a cartoon and they would be... And then it took, as I said, it took hours to come up with ideas and designs and stuff.
Did they, the punchline, did you have to make that up or did you have a writer?
No, I did it. I came up with the whole idea and, they weren't editorial, it was just kind of lightly making fun of Port Jefferson.
Yeah,
And then the Port Jeff record closed down and
okay.
it was out of business for a while and it came out, the Beacon, I think, is now, but I never went back to it. And, let's see. Then, probably the most significant thing, one time I was at the Wallbound Shopping Center in Selden, and somebody came up to me and said, do you know where Bald Hill is? There's an art show there. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, I'll take you there. I'd like to see an art show. So they followed me, and I came, and I went into the art show at Bald Hill, and I couldn't get a hold of this to work. And so much pastels. I never saw a show with so many pastels. And beautiful. And I realize now, looking back, it was Walter and all these members, and Nikki and other people, it was their work. And Barbara was sitting, and she mentioned it was a group, wet paints, and she gave me the card. I'm not comfortable in groups, so I had this card, and I think it was 2 years later. I don't know what made me decide. Well, the office was in Hopog at the time, and then we moved to Ronkonkoma. And I think I was clearing out my desk, and I came across the card. And then I was thinking, well, if I work late, I could, right? I live in Mount Sinai, so it's a good trip to get here. But I figured if I work late in Ronkonkoma, I could just come over to work. And so I came to the first meeting and was very impressed with it. And why I brought this in, this was the first piece of work I brought into wet paints for critique. And I remember sitting there waiting for somebody to look. And they picked everyone and everyone. And, you know how you have them facing the back, and they're waiting, and are they going to like it? You know, and I'm nervous as anything, and waiting and waiting and waiting. So the last one that they finally picked, but people liked it. So, and that was a sort of a self-portrait. I used myself as a model. And actually, I liked it very much. It was a freer than I actually do now, so I kind of loved it very much. But that started the wet paints, and I think that probably was the most significant thing for me art-wise, because it was all these other times, you're just by yourself painting, nobody else sees it. You know, maybe with me with commissions, you know, I'm not commissioned, I didn't have commissions, but I would do them for friends and stuff, and that'd be about it. And this was the first time there was a group of people, and it was really exciting. People sharing and learning all about, you know, different shows and stuff that were going on. And before that, I didn't even know there was any groups or any shows. You know, I never even went to an art show, you know, before that. You know, so it was really, really an eye-opener and enjoyable. And the rest are just kind of samples of the work. Let's see. Well, another significant thing for me was the digital camera. Because before that, you know, if you were to enter any type of show, you needed to submit slides and stuff like that. And I would have things under glass. It was just so difficult. But then when you had a digital camera, you could submit things online. So this was the first one I submitted to a show in Connecticut. And actually what was nice was Daniel Green was the judge. And there was 200 paintings there from all over the country. And sitting next to me, there were paintings that they were charging $10,000 for. But I got third place.
Who was that, Terry?
Oh, there's also a change. This was from a website, I think Christine Zamora mentioned it in her talk about the Wet Canvas, where they allow you to use reference photos from them, anybody that submits. So that's where he was from. After that, I really prefer to use my own photos. That's why the digital camera is nice for me, because with something like that, somebody else set up the scene. But at least when I take my own, it's totally my own. It's even if it is from the photo, but still I set up the design of the portrait. And that's where, yeah, he was mowing the lawn, and I saw him and I said he had really an interesting face. And I took him. And let's see. Oh, this was interesting also. Well, backtrack. About 10 years ago, we were at a flea market in Mount Sinai, and this man was there selling some stuff. And he had an interesting face, and I asked if I could, take his photo and do a portrait. So he agreed to pose. So he gave a little background. He was a Vietnam vet. He was kind of struggling and trying to make ends meet. And I also think he might have had a drinking problem, but anyway, he posed for the picture. He let me take a picture. I did this. About 2 years ago, we were at the flea market at Bald Hill, and I just took photos around of groups. And when I got back home, I'm enlarging some to see if I could find anybody interesting. And I focused in on this one person, and I realized it's the same man.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. If you look, you can see.
Look that he's a little tiny bit. Yeah. Thank you.
Did you
getting
Oh,
to
yes. Oh, yeah.
He looks like the age.
Yeah, he aged. But it was definitely, you know, from other photos, I could, you know, I could see even better that it was the same person, so it was amazing.
Yeah.
Did you talk to him
No,
again?
no, I didn't. He gave me permission on this one, so,
Yeah.
and I knew his background, so.
Terry, did he ever see the portrait?
No. I don't know where it was from. I can't remember now if he gave, I don't know if he had an email address. I don't think he did. No, he didn't. No, so,
He would have loved it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
no. Let me see. Then the rest are just,
Is that your grandson?
yeah, these are my grandson. Finally, I had finished, we have 6 grandkids and I've done each of them and he was the last one. And it was a little, I think, I didn't bring on a lot of stuff because you've seen them. I think I end up doing maybe about one a month and I end up bringing it in here. You know, so you've seen everything, pretty much everything I did. But I do have a portfolio, if any people wants to
Did
look
you ever
at
do
it.
Pauline's space?
And,
Terry, did you ever do Pauline Bale?
no. I did make a kind of a thing in the front of various portraits that I've done. You know, so anybody wants to look at it later. And, I guess with the animal, why I brought those in is when I do the commissions, what I found was people seemed to be more interested in having their animals done. So I started doing dogs and cats. And, this, actually, for a while, Joy had that gallery in Patchogue, and there was a woman that just loved cats. And I sold about 10 cats. So I don't have any of the originals. This was a photo of, you know, the pastel.
Fantastic.
That's a wonderful.
But she just snapped up all these portraits of cats. So
That one looks like it's almost 3D.
Yes.
Yeah,
The way the face
The
is
way
coming
it's
out, it's
like
gonna
this,
pop out
just,
of the
yeah, the face. When you're painting, say you're taking your own photograph, so you're remembering kind of what the lighting and the coloring is. But when you're working, are you intellectualizing, oh, I should put a little blue here for shadow, and, or maybe I shouldn't put green over here, because then, I mean, do you do that to
well,
yourself
I
like constantly?
don't do as much life drawing as I should, but I do study faces all the time. In fact, sometimes it's embarrassing because I'm staring at something. And I'm really looking at the coloring of their face. And so I kind of know general complexion and stuff. And a lot of the photographs don't show the colors, but I'll exaggerate it to myself because I know there should be maybe green here, certain greens and faces and stuff. And I try to look for that. And a lot of times in the photo, it's barely there, but I'll bring it out, try to bring it out. And I was trying to think when well, what am I looking for in a photo? And it varies, I mean, for a portrait, and it varies. The one I'm working on right now, what appealed to me was there was a light coming through on the shoulder, and just that is what struck me. And rather than the face, that's unusual for me, but it was just so interesting. You know, that I couldn't bring it in because it's, you know, with the rain and it's not framed or anything.
I have a question for you about when you're looking at people. You know, I have a habit of doing that too, although I'm not a portrait artist. But what I do is just look for similarities with other people or in the eyes. Or do you do that? Do you like connect people? This guy looks like.
We're always arguing because I'll say, "Oh, that looks like so and so."
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, can you see that?" He said, "No, I don't see that." Yeah.
Yeah.
See that. But it is amazing. What I sometimes think is the billions of people in the world.
Yeah.
How can they have nobody alike? How is it
Everybody has
possible?
to.
I mean, there are some similarities, but there's not one person alike. It's fascinating. But what I also look for, of course, is the eyes that appeal to me. And then also, I think this part of the mouth really is significant in creating a mood in the face. You know, it's not just the eyes, it's the expression in the mouth, I think, that goes along with it. So I concentrate on that as well.
Your backgrounds, are they a mix of what you use in the face and clothing, or do you pick something different, opposite?
I never quite know what I'm going to do. I was trying to think on this one, why did I put the background in that? Was there any meaning? You know, he's a Vietnam vet, that's what I called it. And I was trying to think, I think it just came down to, I think it was too blank in the background, so I just added some color.
Okay.
But other times, they can vary. I like to put something in the background too, so it's not just flat, plain. But, the amount, I don't know.
You don't have a way to
varies.
choose it?
What?
You choose the color?
Yeah.
On what basis?
That's why I don't teach. People say, it's what, sometimes I will end up doing it back. I can do the faces fairly easily. I mean, not easily, but I can do the faces. It's the colors that go with it all around. I try to go along the way, but that's where I struggle most, is to make it in harmony with it. So I know, like this one, probably, before I end up with this, there's probably 10 different backgrounds on that before I was finally happy. So I know what I like,
Kind of reflects
it's just
the
I don't
color
necessarily know how to
face.
get there. You know, and I'll finally arrive at it, but it's not like a trained artist with color and stuff that would know immediately that this would be the color to use. I have to struggle with that.
Terry, do you add the background after you complete the
No,
portrait?
well,
or you-
I go along at the same time. It's just that I don't necessarily like what's there, and I'll have to keep trying and struggling to.
Until your mind tells you you like
Yes,
this
that's
particular.
exactly.
Now, what about the paper that you use, and what's your pastels? What favorite ones do you like to use?
I like the sanded pastels now. I used to always use the Canson. This is Canson. That was my favorite color also. It was nice with pastels, portraits. But the sand grips the pastel. You can go many layers and get more depth into the colors when you use the sand. So I use the Wallace sandpaper or the Art Spectrum. And I tend towards the grays with that. And I go in, depending on the type of portrait, if I'm doing something that's commissioned, then I'm going to be very careful to get the exact likeness, and I'll work very carefully in the beginning in charcoal and make sure everything's in the faces in the right position and features and correct before I go into pastel. If I'm doing it for myself, I'm not worried about that, so I'll rough in, where the eyes are, the nose, the mouth. I'm not really particularly concerned whether it looks like the person. I'm using them as a reference because I want the lighting, the shadows, and that type of thing. So often it looks like the person, but it's not my interest, to get a detail. So I can be freer with that, and I enjoy it a lot more.
Basically, you never really went to an art school or formal art training?
Did I know? I read
You're just not.
probably every how-to book from the library, Daniel Green and whoever, and buy every book. I used to go to Borders, and anytime I did a new pastel book or a drawing book or anything, I have them all. It was my reading material.
Terry, you could have used, doing the brilliant pastels that you do, you could have also chose to do them in oil or acrylic, but you seem to really enjoy pastel.
Yeah, I like oil when I do it, but I have a short attention span. And I think that's what I like with pastel, is I can come and I can work for 5 minutes and leave, or I can work for an hour and leave. I always felt with oil, you need a block of time, you have to come out, you have to set it up, and then you don't want to waste, like, go dry on it, so I kind of, I said, well, I'd like to do an oil today, well, I don't have time. So I'll do a pastel. And that's why I tended to be with the pen and ink. more than anything else. That was always handy, convenient to do. You know, I used to go around Port Jefferson all the time until they kept building and building, and no parking here, no parking there. You know, finally, there's no place to go. Yeah. But I forgot, I'm excited, I dragged out all my pen and inks, the pens and stuff like that.
They're beautiful.
I think maybe I'll start trying to do that again. So,
Yeah, it's fun.
How long does a portrait usually take?
it's kind of hard to say.
Everybody's
Or as I think as Mike and Mario say, 40 years. That's your answer, 40 years. It can vary. Sometimes I can get right off, and other times I struggle. But again, as I say, I spend more time with, see on him, I spent my grandson more time on that shirt than anything else. Trying to find the right color, you know, whether it's too dark, too light, I had it too dark, you know, and lightened it up and so on, and back and forth, and you
He's
know,
definitely a
hands are a
perfectionist.
struggle for me. I'm trying to add more portraits with hands and stuff, but that's more of the work.
Terry, do you find it's harder to draw someone who you know than someone who you don't know?
No, I don't think it would make any difference. They just may never talk to me. They might too realistic. And particularly, I think that's why I tend to older men. They don't care. Well, they do. I saw my uncle did a self-portrait. I looked at myself. Now I know why everybody gets mad at me. It's like,
Terry, do you have a dedicated space? Do you have a studio?
oh yeah. Well, it's a disaster. I'm not the neatest person, but it's a kind of an unfinished or partially finished attic. Our house is, we have that farm ranch type, so it's a huge, actually huge space. And Fran has her.
A little piece of it.
Oh, you got your corner.
A little piece.
When I did the cartoon, I used to have a ping pong table, and we didn't use it for ping pong. I used it for doing all the cartoons, different ideas, and just get spread out.
Terry, do you paint women
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The most why I don't have many of them is those are commissions and they're gone.
You had just
They're
done
harder
the,
though because you're, you know, men with a strong nose and crinkly face. You know, if you're off slightly, it's not going to be that noticeable. But a woman, you know, with a more delicate features, you're off slightly, it's going to be much more noticeable. And then women don't want to have their wrinkles showing, and
That's right, yeah.
crow's feet and stuff.
you just did the commission for the senator's wife?
Oh, yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, fortunately, she liked it. Her husband liked it too. He's more so.
Keep everybody happy.
So, that's it. I guess, as they say, I think this group is just phenomenal in terms of, I think as I said, most likely they were more doodles and stuff like that, you know, around, nothing really serious. It's since I joined this group that I really gotten more serious into doing artwork and camaraderie. And that's what Fran said, like I was a nervous wreck before this, and she said, but everybody there's friends.
Yeah.
Not out there to, you know, rip you apart, so. I have, if anybody's interested, the Art League, there's the portrait show. The reception's this Sunday, 3 to 5. And the juror is Burton Silverman, if anybody knows him, he's a real famous portrait artist. And so he was the judge. And in that show is Judy Davidson and Roseanne are also in the show.
Where is it?
The Art League in Dix Hills. It's on the service road of the Northern State Parkway at exit 42 and Park Avenue and exit 42. It's right there, on the corner.
Is it only on Sunday? Is it the show only on Sunday?
No, that's reception.
Oh.
Otherwise, the show is open through the 7th, I think June 17th.
Right, I can't go. But I'd like to see it.
That should be an interest.
The tea. In fact, you're gonna be at the tea.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.